Welcome to the Travelman Podcast with your host, Ben. It was supposed to be in this direction. Maybe it's up this path. Past this old tree. Oh man, I'm not liking this 1 minute. Maybe that's it in the distance? It looks like this might be the place. Not much further, I hope. Weird. The doors are opening. Oh, this place doesn't look right. Hello? 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 Greetings, travellers. This is a very special podcast I have for you today. Today on this Halloween-styled podcast, I'll be taking a look at some of Australia's most haunted hotels and what makes them so scary. I'm thinking only the real crazies and the slightly absurd and maybe even the foolish would want to stay at these places. The internet just happens to be chock full of people's opinions on the scariest and most haunted places to stay at worldwide. I was wondering, where do I start? Okay, all these lists are just people's opinions. I think it'd be good to have an Aussie feel to it. So today it's just Australian hotels and no others. Maybe I'll do international hotels that are haunted later on. Maybe in another podcast, who knows. But anyway, there's still no credible evidence of ghosts or the things that move in the night. Maybe we live in a parallel dimension where ghosts are just those people stuck between worlds. Considering it's close to Halloween, I thought how cool would it be to do a spooky Halloween special. Maybe next year I can do the scariest or most haunted cities in the world to visit. Maybe you let me know. Maybe send me a message, email, whatever. Then maybe I could do even the most scariest and most haunted ghost tours to go on, or because I love ghost tours. I've done a lot. I've done one in Prague, which was amazing. I've done one in Melbourne. I've done one in Beechworth. I've done one in Tasmania. Where else have I done one? I've done one some other places too. They're so much fun. But I've got a few Halloween specials up my sleeve. I've always liked this time of the month, even though I'm not American. As a child, I always celebrated Halloween with my friends from school. We were very naughty little kids that did things to people's front gardens, very naughty little things. That was quite a long time ago, so there'll be no poop in a bag or copious amounts of toilet paper wrapped around trees anymore from me. I was initially, when I was thinking about doing this, doing a top 10 list, but I actually ended up doing 9, so that's all right. 9's good. So what I'm going to do for you today is going to be 9 of the scariest and most haunted hotels to stay at. But instead, I've just compiled some of the most haunted hotels in Australia. So 9 of the most haunted hotels in Australia, it's good enough for me. I think it's really hard to rank a hotel by its accommodation or its scare factor, its accommodation scare factor more so. So the first hotel we're staying at tonight is one of the scariest places I've ever visited. It's a very creepy set out place because it used to be a lunatic asylum. So the Beechworth Lunatic Asylum was founded in 1867. We'll be staying in the old nurses' quarters on the grounds that are all dilapidated. Back in the day, it was also known as the Mayday Hills Lunatic Asylum. This is where the insane were sent to try and be helped. The asylum ran for about 128 years and closed in 1995. Now, I'm laughing because the cat is all over me. Get off, cat. Get off, cat. You cheeky little bugger. She's trying to walk all over the laptop. So it was closed in 1995, but it was very famous for its ha-ha walls that from the inside gave the appearance of a very large wall. So if you can imagine, if you're inside, you'd actually see the top of the wall, or kind of would be at eye level, a bit higher. And then, no, probably higher than eye level. What am I talking about? They could just jump over it. So it must have really driven the patients crazy, because what happened was it would be like a slope that went gradually lower and lower and lower. So the bottom of the wall would actually be, from the bottom to the top of the wall, it would be massive. It would be huge. But from outside of the asylum's walls, it looked quite short to kind of suggest imprisonment. Not to suggest it, because that's not what they wanted to do. Beforehand, the patients were actually at Beechworth's jail. So I'm sure the idea was to try and make this feel nicer than a jail, because they weren't criminals, they were just mentally insane. Now, it was a few years back when I stayed at the Latrobe University Accommodation with my wife. At the time, I didn't feel creeped out at all. The rooms were a little dated, a bit dilapidated rooms. Lights would flicker on and off. I heard footsteps in the hall. Only kidding. No, I swear we were the only ones there at the time. I don't think anyone ever wanted to stay at that place. I remember when we got there, my wife didn't like the feel of the place at all. She complained of feeling sick. The 2 nights that we stayed there were horrible for her. We came back from dinner one night and she felt so uneasy in the stomach. She even had sleeping issues. She's not a believer in ghosts, so I'm still unsure if it was nerves or that she had thought of the place being haunted. So naturally, that made her feel uneasy. I guess we'll never know. As soon as we left the asylum, she had started feeling better. We've been back to Beechworth since, but stayed in a lovely Airbnb. This time we did the fun ghost tour that they have on offer there. If you want to try it out, you can go to www.asylumghosttours.com, and it was fantastic. They had me up on a autopsy table, just to show the rest of the group what it looked like for someone to be on an autopsy table. So I put my hand up, I got up there. It was very funny, actually. So there's pictures online. Or there's pictures that I can put online if you like. I was going to say, for any of the information coming up, for some of the articles anyway, I've used an article by news.com.au. If you want the full article, you can go to news.com.au/travel/travel ideas, Australia's most haunted hotels, and you'll find it there. Or just search for Australia's most haunted hotels. Hotels, man. So, number 2. We're leaving Beechworth in country Victoria and heading to the Grand Hotel in Millicent, South Australia, to a building that probably dates back to the 1880s. I've tried finding out the date it was built, but to no avail. The Grand Hotel offers a ghost tour to go on, but for a bit of fun, you can see if you can book a room when they're filming a reality TV ghost show. I haven't been here, but it looks interesting and creepy. It's rated as one of the most haunted hotels in South Australia. This hotel is haunted by many, many ghosts. One of the ghosts is of a little boy who plays around the pool area. Another ghost is of a woman that appears in the old service quarters of the hotel, and then there's even an elderly gentleman that strolls up and down the stairs at night. There's always a really strong smell of smoke in his wake, so if you smell the smoke, he's probably strolling up the stairs. It gave me a bit of a shiver up the spine. These sightings and stories have been seen by visitors and people who work at the hotel. Strange occurrences have been seen in many of the rooms throughout the hotel. There's also been a case of the cupboard doors that swung open by themselves, furniture that had been displaced throughout the night, and doors that would open and close. People have even witnessed a ghostly apparition of a woman named Mary standing in the corner of the room. I hope that wasn't too creepy for you all. For the record, I'd never stay there. Oh man, just imagine seeing that woman in the corner of the room. I think I would SH1T myself. Now, number 3. Now that you've been scared half to death, hopefully you've been scared half to death, I thought it would be nice to go to an even scarier place. A place that has so much history that it makes it a famous as well as an infamous place. That is Port Arthur in Tasmania. That's that little triangle at the bottom of Australia, if anyone from America is listening. It's located about half an hour outside of Hobart and in a really nice part of the world. I was here many, many, many years ago, probably in the early to mid 2000s. Port Arthur has supposedly been haunted for much longer than that. Some say since the 1800s. Much longer in time than when that crazy, deranged Martin Bryant came upon those tourists and tragically opened fire on them, killing many and making it Australia's worst mass shooting ever. Gun laws were changed from that point, and we've never had a mass shooting since. So that's a positive to a very, very big negative. I've done the ghost tour there at the grounds, and it was quite an experience. It was very late at night when I did it, and I was with my wife and her cousin. It was so dark that you couldn't even see past your flashlight. On this night, the rain and hail came down in buckets. The wind was staggeringly vicious also. We had to bunk down in areas under porches and eaves. The rain was still wetting the lot of us, so, I remember we left Port Arthur so wet. We had to take some of our clothes off and then just pretty much dry it in the car, and it was an hour and a half back following another car in front of me. So if I didn't have that car in front of me, it would have been pitch black roads, windy roads too, lots of gum trees, heaps of koalas. I'm joking there, but yeah, it would have been a tough drive home. Now, the guide even brought us into one of the most haunted hotels in Australia. Apparently they had workers stay there one night, or a few nights that they were working on the house, unbeknownst that they were staying in a very haunted place, one of the most haunted houses in Australia. The guide told us that these workers complained of being touched on the shoulder and also feeling heavy in the heart, and even the feeling of being strangled. I don't think I'd ever want to work there, and I don't think they lasted that long. Let's just say that they avoided smoko, as all they wanted to do was get the job done and get the hell out of there. Port Arthur does offer accommodation on its grounds. They have a hotel which was once home to a penal colony, dating back to 1830. This hotel once had the reputation as being the place from hell. It offers accommodation in the guards' quarters, as well as accommodation in the officers' row rooms. This accommodation is located near the old convict buildings. I don't think I'd ever like to stay there. It's got way too much history for me. I'm happy if I've seen it once, and that's once is enough, so I probably won't be back. Number 4. From Tasmania, we pack our bags and head north to Melbourne. Yes, that's right, north. I was just about to say south, but it is north, because Tasmania is south. So we head north to Melbourne in Victoria, the state's Victoria, and we're going to the Windsor Hotel. Originally built in 1883 and once named the Grand Hotel, only changing its name in the 1920s in tribute to the royal family. The majestic and beautiful old hotel is also quite a haunted place. As well as having a very expensive and lavish hotel room to boot, I've only been there once from memory, and that was for my uncle and auntie's wedding when I was about 13 or 14, and my brother and I had matching Mickey Mouse tracksuits on. That was in the early 90s. A lot of fun. I learned later on in life from a ghost tour that I went on around Melbourne CBDs that indeed the Windsor Hotel is haunted. Haunted by the ghosted Dame Nellie Melba, who was a very, very famous opera singer. She apparently haunts one of the suites in the hotel. It would be nice to know what suite she haunts so that I can avoid staying at that suite if I ever stay at the Windsor. Number 5. We're leaving the Windsor Hotel now and packing our bags for Queensland, where we are heading to a hotel that looks more like an outback pub. It's called the Australian Hotel, and it's located in a place called Boonah, which I've never been to either. Boonah is located in Queensland. For all you non-Australians, Queensland is that state in the top eastern part of Australia. Apparently this hotel is haunted by the ghost of a 23-year-old woman. She's also meant to be quite nice, and locals are more than happy to share stories about her. I may have to check this place out, as I've never heard of Boonah, the actual town it's in, or the creepy hotel. I really couldn't find too much information on this hotel, but it is quite a haunted hotel. Now from Boonah, we're going to head to beautiful Manly in New South Wales. At number 6, we're going to be checking out the Q Station Hotel. otherwise known as a Quarantine Station Hotel in North Head, Manly, which sits on 30 beautiful hectares of amazing bushland. I didn't realise the Quarantine Station had a hotel or accommodation on site until now. I've been meaning to do the great ghost tour they offer for years, but unfortunately I've never had the chance to do it when I've been in Manly, which I've been in Manly quite a few times in the past. Said that this site is the most haunted in all of Australia, considering what happens there. So, a little bit of background information. Since 2008, the Q Station has offered accommodation. The area of land that the Q Station site is on is surrounded by Australian native plants and wildlife, perched on the cliff of North Head that overlooks Sydney's majestic harbour. One of the reasons for the many ghost sightings at the Q Station was that it was originally built to quarantine and protect Sydney's population of diseased immigrants arriving into Sydney via ship. The Quarantine Station in North Head was set up in 1833. For the 150 years that the Quarantine Station operated, around 600 immigrants had died out of the 26,000 people that were housed there. People died of things like bubonic plague, yellow fever, Spanish influenza, smallpox, typhus, and worst of all, scarlet fever, which I had as a baby. But luckily, they didn't chuck me in there. Although, I'm lucky as it closed its doors in 1980, and I was born in 1980, so I kind of missed the cut-off point. Nowadays, it's just got the original heritage buildings, which houses the Heritage Centre, the hotel, and also the ghost tour, which operates there. Apparently, all the spirits remain and haunt people to this day. There's even a girl called Mary Ann who has blonde plaits that holds the hand of tourists and leads them around pathways. She even hides in bushes or even tries to pull at your jacket. She seems like a very cheeky little one. Some of the original ghosts that haunt the Quarantine Station is an alluring Chinese fisherman who haunts the surrounds, as well as a small Jewish boy called Isaac. That is terribly cheeky, apparently. He died of scarlet fever and was very sick. There's also quite a strict hospital matron, which will pull you into line. There's actually a great picture online taken by a tourist of a man standing in a corridor wearing a fedora hat, and by his side is a small child. The photo was taken in the first-class shower block, which is apparently the most haunted part of the Q Station. Many people will feel ill when they enter this part of the building. People even say that they get pushed and even hear sounds. There's also an area called the Inhalation Chambers, which is also a very haunted area. There's a ghost called Red that haunts this area, and if he thinks you're carrying an illness like a cold, so you don't want to go there when you've got a cold, he'll try and scare you to make you leave the room. The inhalation chambers were there to make sure healthy people didn't get Spanish influenza. They had to breathe in steam infused with zinc sulfite. If someone infected entered the chambers, they'd spread the disease via the steam. Red was actually one of those victims, so that's why he'd scare you if you were sick. So, boys and girls, never do the ghost tour if you're sick, because you might meet Red, and you don't want to meet Red, because he seems like a very angry ghost. Other things that have happened at the Q Station is that people have suddenly fallen ill, become nauseous, like I mentioned before. Apparitions have appeared. Things have been displaced without any explanation. People have even heard voices for no reason at all. And also people have been said to have left the Q Station in a hurry because something had spooked them. Number 7. Now we're just heading down the highway to the Russell Hotel's famous room number 8, where we've checked in for the night. I found out about this hotel via a great ghost tour I went on in the Rocks. The tour is operated by the Rocks Ghost Tour, www.ghosttours.com.au. The Russell Hotel was first built in 1790 and was rebuilt in 1820. It's one of Australia's oldest buildings. Some say that this hotel was also used as a brothel. I won't go into what a brothel is, not on this podcast, because we're a travel podcast, not a brothel podcast. The Russell Hotel is located smack bang in the middle of the Rocks, the oldest part of Sydney's CBD, which has a very interesting history. In 1788, The Rocks was to have its first established European settlement and was set up to be a penal colony. It was established by the Englishman Captain Arthur Phillip. Anyway, this isn't a history lesson for you. If you want to read up more about this interesting area, then go online or pick up a book on the Rocks. Or maybe I'll do a Rocks podcast, because I really love this part of Sydney. It has the most interesting history in all of Sydney, and it wouldn't be hard to do a podcast. It wouldn't be hard to do a podcast on it, considering I called Sydney home once upon a time. And I love it to bits. It's just such an interesting part of the world. Now, its room number 8 is apparently haunted by a sailor. Occasionally, women will see him standing at the end of their bed. This would absolutely freak me out. Luckily, I'm a guy. But people also feel a tight sensation in their chest, like someone is sitting on them. Apparently, this sailor only shows himself to women. There's also the cupboards which will creak during the night and make strange noises like taps. Like that. They would leak for no taps. I was thinking they were like taps like this, but they're taps like a faucet. So taps would leak at no reason at all. There's also the occasional footsteps which create creaking in the floorboards. Staff are called upon to go and check out the occurrence, but nothing is ever found. Of course, nothing is ever found. You can't see ghosts. Number 8. We're heading south now to the Eastern Hotel in Ballarat. It's the last of our haunted hotels to visit, and I know nothing about it. I've been to Ballarat a few times. Ballarat is a country town a few hours out of Melbourne, which is famous for Sovereign Hill, where I used to go on countless school excursions to. I remember having to sit down at the desk dressed in clothes dating back to the 1850s with a teacher telling off all the kids. Apparently teachers back then were real tyrants. Sovereign Hill is a replica gold rush town with streets and shops set up. Everyone dresses up so that you may think you've stepped back in time. It's actually quite cool. So if you're a tourist and you're in Melbourne, drive up to Ballarat, go to Sovereign Hill, check it out. Why not? Just do it. Ballarat was also well known for its gold, as well as the Eureka Stockade, which I won't go into now. Ballarat became quite prosperous in the 1880s due to its mining, and was often compared to cities in Europe. Ballarat is an Aboriginal word for resting place, Ballarat. There's also another quick history lesson for everyone. Now, let's find out more about this Eastern Hotel. Well, this is a pub that happens to have many, many ghosts. In 2013, it was being restored back to its original 1862 style. From the photos, it looks pretty nice. One of its ghosts is its owner, Mr. Thomas Redshaw Hunt. You can usually tell if it's him if you can smell the trailing odour of tobacco smoke. There's a bit of a theme in this podcast, actually, the trailing tobacco smoke. There was also an English mother called Maggie and her daughter Sarah, who had arrived via boat from England. They happened to have both died of yellow fever shortly after arriving at the hotel. The ladies are thought to have haunted the rooms in the hotel. There was also a baby that died in a mining puddle. As well as the baby and the 2 ladies, there was also 2 Indigenous men that worked at the hotel, which have also been cited, as well as an Irish man that was stabbed to death in the hotel's kitchen. A manager at the Eastern Hotel had the spooky pleasure to serve the former owner, Mr. Hunt. She'd also feel very strange and uneasy when she was in the kitchen. Now, that would have been very, very scary. Maybe avoid the kitchen. Now, I said that number 8 was the final hotel, but I lie, because our final hotel is in country Victoria. It comes in at number 9. It's a final hotel we'll be visiting, so we'll be leaving our baggage there. It's called the Coach and Horses Inn. It's located near the border of Hume and the Macedon Ranges on Station Street in Clarkfield. As I said before, I was just informed of this place, and I was discussing the Halloween podcast with someone, and I spoke about my ideas for the most haunted hotels in Australia, And they said, have you heard of this hotel? And they said it was I think the Clarkfield Hotel. I did some research. It's actually the Coach and Horses Inn. But that doesn't matter. I think it deserves to be added to the list, so I've added it. Now, dates back to 1857. This two-story, beautifully built bluestone building has gone through various owners and name changes. Originally, it was called the Coach and Horses Inn, before it was changed to the Lansfield Hotel in 1873, and then it became the Clarkfield Hotel, and now it's back to its original name. This hotel has an interesting past. It has many ghostly and creepy things going on there. That being said, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to not discuss it. It's been said that the Coach and Horses Inn was a strange place for the deceased. A strange place. It's a storage place for the deceased. It is a strange place because they stored the deceased. Bodies were brought here to be stored in the cool room, as bodies needed to be kept somewhere because at the time towns didn't have access to morgues or police stations where bodies would normally be stored. So they had to be kept cooled. Some of the ghosts that haunt the Coach and Horses Inn is an Irish gold miner by the name of Patrick Reagan, who was robbed and killed in the hotel. You can still hear him running up the stairs to escape his captors. Also, there are reports that children can hear and see a crying little girl in the toilets of the hotel. Currently, this is the hotel's most well-known spirit. The story goes that she was killed and her body was found in the bottom of a well nearby to the hotel. Guests have also heard footsteps outside their rooms. They've also seen apparitions of a young girl and have seen paintings fly off their hooks. There was also a time when one of the previous owners had been woken up at around 2 a.m. by the sounds of bottles and glasses rattling downstairs. So he decided to get out of bed, see what the commotion was. And as he was walking towards the stairs, he felt like a cold breeze go past him. Immediately after this, he felt a strange force push him down the stairs. Unfortunately, his foot was shattered in 3 different places and was on crutches for about 7 months. After this, he would hear people call his name, but no guests or anyone else was around. So he was hearing someone, call his name, and the hotel was empty. There was also been many occurrences like a strange face in a tree, that even when the wind blew from different directions, the face would stay dead still. As well as a strange face in the tree, there's also been weird mists in the kitchen and loud bangs that would then be followed by strange luminous figures. Animals would also start screaming and howling for no reason at all. Now, I hope you really like that podcast. I think that's about all from me today. If you'd like to send me some ideas for future podcasts or even some haunted hotels in Australia that I missed, then I'd be happy to talk about them on the next podcast, which I reckon will be another 3 weeks from this one. Please subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet. You can find this podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and all good podcast apps. Follow me on Instagram or Facebook, as I have a page set up there. Look for the Travel Man Podcast. Remember, Travel Man is one word. You can always email me at travelmanpodcast@gmail.com. I also have a website, which is notoriously hard to find. There's a link in the notes, maybe. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next podcast. Thanks, guys, and ciao. Really? Am I ever going to find this bloody place? I've had enough of this. Oh, Jesus. I shouldn't have said that. Bye.